looking at a plugin, and we're going to be looking at my favorite MV plugin of all time, MV3D. With MV3D, your games can go from being 2D and looking like this to looking like this. MV3D is compatible with many other plugins as long as they don't affect the graphics on the map, including pixel movement plugins and diagonal sprite plugins. This plugin was created by Dread, otherwise known as Nyanak. I hope I'm saying that right. I'll put a link in the description below to her Patreon and itch.io where you can either become a patron or purchase this plugin outright for a perpetual license. The reason that this is my favorite RPG Maker MV plugin should be pretty obvious. This completely changes the way that you would use the RPG Maker MV engine, and it completely changes the way that you would play a game made in RPG Maker. If it weren't for these default assets being used, you would not be able to tell that this was an RPG Maker game. And this is the only singular plugin, I guess it's technically 2 or 3 plugins, that can make this happen. This is actually the demo file that you can download from Dread's itch.io page. As such, it contains all of the examples you need to make your own 3D world using this plugin. We're going to take a look at this world and exactly what you can pull off using this plugin by exploring this area, and then we're going to dig into how to use some of these commands ourselves and have some different use cases going. So right here you have the tutorial fairy. When you talk to her, you can set your camera mode. You can have first person, normal, or isometric. First person mode is pretty self-explanatory, and you retain the ability to move diagonally if you want that. Now, speaking about movement plugins, this works great with Alt Limit or Ultimate, and also with Q movement, so pick your plugin of choice. I prefer Ultimate myself. Setting the camera mode back to normal, this is also known as perspective, and then we can also set the camera to isometric, which is also known as orthographic. Now, no matter where you are, the sizes of things don't change. Just like in a typical isometric RPG, with this plugin you can create the PlayStation 1 love letter of your dreams. And that's exactly what I am doing with ReWonderland. But more on that later. Now, this plugin isn't exactly new. It's been out for a little while, and there have been other videos covering its usage and its features. But I wanted to dig a little bit more into the tutorial aspects on how to use it, and just give an overview of how easy it is to use. So let's keep exploring for a bit, and then we'll dig right into that. So right away, coming into the shop, we have a couple of features that we should cover. If we can just get our party members out of our way. This man is standing behind a counter. The counter effect is something that you can apply to any tile that you want. Here it just makes sense with this particular tile. You'll notice that when I change camera angles, the man changes position accordingly. Well, he doesn't have a diagonal position, so as soon as we go into a diagonal camera mode, he turns to faces, but I think that's more natural anyway. But you'll notice the sprites of the tiles on the countertop do not have a different direction. They actually rotate to face us, and they stay facing us the whole time. This is referred to as billboard graphics. We've also got some examples of configurations you can use when you are trying to display things in 3D using the note tags. This is a cross shape, and in fact all of these items are using the cross shape except for the plant. Nope, including the plant. We can still do certain screen effects like the screen shake. Still able to draw things on the screen. In the distance you have a little bit of a fog that helps with your rendering and covers up new things that get rendered. This fog is fully configurable from its color to how far back it goes to whether or not it's even enabled. And see, there's an example of something getting loaded in kind of ahead of the fog. You can set your render distance, that's completely configurable. The distance of the camera to the player is completely configurable as well. So is the default settings for the pitch, the yaw, and the roll of the camera. And you can have these locked, or you can even set them up to be moved manually by the player using a controller or the keyboard. You'll notice the edge of the island is actually a little bit higher than the water using the fringe in our note tags, and we can have tiles floating on the water, as you can see from the lily pads and the algae growing in these ponds. Now I have control over the camera, I can rotate it, but of course, as mentioned, you can actually turn that off for your game if you want, and I have played a couple of games already on the channel, namely Fractalus and Pumpkin Boss. Pumpkin Boss uses a fixed angle camera in the very first scene in the house, and Fractalus is completely first person. Still have access to your vehicle as you would in RPG Maker MV by default. All of your party crams into the bus or the ship or the airship and goes wherever that vehicle can go, which in this case is not in the deep water. But notice that the boat is floating. Quick look at animation. We can still do tile animation. That still applies here, and there's our waterfall. And you'll watch when we go into the cave, nice little camera animation. The camera closes in on the opening to the cave. Inside of the cave, we have a flashlight effect that can be enabled or disabled. You can make a really cool horror game or survival game with this element. This is another example of a billboard graphic, this time used on a sign. I haven't touched on the transparency when you're walking through a bush, but it is there, and that is also configurable. We still can have on-screen effects like rain, and there's an example of an enemy walking around. You can't get me, you stupid slime. By the way, I should make the distinction. These trees are set up like crosses, whereas everything that's using diagonal that looks the same is X-cross, so that is just another option that you have. The mushrooms pictured here are using the X-cross, and the trees are just using normal cross. The difference is that the X-cross is rotated 45 degrees, while the tree cross shape is rotated 90. And here in another second, we're going to take a look at these maps in the editor to see what it is that you're working with whenever you're trying to create something like this. The demo comes with a little bit more. Let's look at some slopes. And something I want to cover, two things I want to cover: the skybox. The skybox is a premium feature, and you can get beautiful skyboxes either by making your own or downloading them. You can customize your own skyboxes, the ceiling, as well as the floor. So the floor for this one's not quite set, which is more attesting to the fact that this is a test map. Focusing on these slopes, you can have your character walk up and down these slopes in order to get to higher ground, and we can actually walk on suspended platforms, so you have another option as well. It's not enabled in this map, but you are also able to fall off of ledges, and if you're good at eventing, you can track the player's Z coordinates and you can create a fall damage system. Alright, so I just want to show you that exact same map, this time in the map editor. Alright, I just want to show you that exact same map, this time in the map editor. Here's what it looks like. Here was our starting position for the player. And I just want to show you there are only a couple of events on this map, and that is for the platforms. No contents in the event, just a note tag. Now if you've used any of Yanfly's plugins, or the majority of plugins out there that help you with eventing, the note tag concept should not be new to you, but if it is, a note tag is just something that looks a little bit like HTML or some other kind of programming that you just type out or copy from a source like the help file or other examples, and you just paste it in one of many places. This is where you would place your note tag for events. You are also able to use plugin commands and scripting within the event to do things with MV3D. One more thing to show you with the light tests, and we have full control over the lighting. The ambient light is very low, but as you approach flame sources, you light up. You can also have looping maps, and you can customize the color of your light sources. It's very pretty. Talking to the fairy activates an event where you can kind of see the skybox. This is more of the parallaxing background actually, but it kind of looks like a skybox now. So you can still use your parallaxing backgrounds with MV3D. Let's pop back out into the world and I'll explain something about free versus premium here. So MV3D has two versions. There is a free version and then there is a premium plugin. I'm not supposed to be here. The free version contains this demo and more features than you could possibly ever need, except for what the premium version has. You'll notice our shadows extending out here. You can control the sun angle and pitch of the shadows and also the sunlight color. So very, very useful if you have a timekeeping system for indicating that it's getting later, that it's turning autumn, that it's dawn in winter. You also have more options when it comes to shadows, and more options for the fog, namely alpha fog, and you can set a glow for it as well. That was the MV3D demo. I'm going to take a look at a project that I made and converted over to 3D using that plugin and look at a lot of the events that I set up to be able to show you some different features. So here's what my project looks like as a 2D map, and I just wanted to point out these sloping tiles, which I failed to point this out when I was looking at the slope map in MV3D, but the way to configure them is using these region ID tags. You've probably used them a lot if you've ever used like Yanfly's plugins. Here they set the height of the tile, and that is also configurable. If you take the shadow pen and draw shadows around the edges, you can actually force the slopes to face whatever way you want, but they will intelligently face towards the adjacent tile that is raised up one. Sometimes that can be a little wonky if you've got a lot of stairs and tiles going on, and that's why the shadow pen is useful, but otherwise this system is very intuitive and it works out great just by default when you leave it alone. So let's see what this looks like. What do you think it's going to look like? Of course this is what it looks like. You've seen this before. This is where I do all of my controller testing. There's my OC Vierge. Whoa, camera speed is insanely fast. So I've got the camera set up right now by default to be at diagonal angles. You've probably seen me moving around this map with my controller support plugin for this plugin. Whoop. Gave a little hop. I have everybody on click triggers so I can just click on them in order to get them to do what I want. Click on the chicken, we go into orthographic mode, so just another look at what that looks like. And if we click on the slime, that changes things back to perspective. Both of these camera views have their uses for sure. These two ladies will change the speed of our camera. And this lady is set up to tell me what my current values are. My camera yaw is at 675, my pitch is at 50, my distance is at 6, and my height is at 0. Camera roll is 0. So what this means is the yaw, or the rotation of the camera around the target, is currently at 675. The pitch, or the rotation around the target on a vertical axis, is at 50. This is configurable. It's 50 degrees from flat. At 0, I think the camera would be at ground level. The distance is 6. It is about 6 tiles away from the player. The height is set to 0 so that if we pitch the camera all the way to the ground, it would be level with the ground, and I think it would be halfway into the ground. It doesn't look very good with the camera down all the way with a height at 0. If you set your height to 1 and you've got your pitch all the way down to 0, then it would look fine depending on what kind of angle you were going for. But those are just some values that you are totally able to configure. You can either give the player the access to controlling those values, or you can set them by the map. You see off in the distance there, I have a character, Maria. Her name floats above her character. That's a little bit wonky. It kind of raises into space as you move away. And here were those slopes that we looked at earlier, and what those region IDs mean for tiles like this. They configure the height, and with those you can make walls. And here's an example of me being able to fall right off. Whoop. I don't have fall damage or anything, so these ladies will control the height of the camera for me when I click on them. Whoops. And these ladies will control the roll of the camera, referred to as rotation for this plugin. Now this can make you a little sick, or you can emulate your characters walking uphill. It does kind of give off the illusion that you are walking uphill. The roll, if you are wanting to create something like an aerial combat game, you can do that now. The roll will allow you to do just that. Or otherwise just go for a very dramatic camera angle. The reason that we've got a little bit of flashing here is because I've got where the camera will, you can't really hide behind stuff, the camera will try to follow you. That is totally configurable as well. I happen to like this particular feature because in most games that I play, if I can rotate the camera against a wall, I can zoom in on my character and get a good look at them. And hello, my beautiful character. My camera control plugin kind of allows you to have access to all that anyway. Let's take a look at that same map again with the premium features turned on. Now the premium features are $20 for the perpetual license right now, or you can subscribe to Dread and become a patron. This map loads a little bit slower just because of the settings that I have right now, but you can see that beautiful skybox in the background, and that skybox is available for free. If you don't want your map to look like a floating island, you can set whatever tiles you like to be placed at the edge and then extend into the visible horizon. Obviously, if we were able to pan the camera or tilt it upwards rather, we would be able to see the horizon, but I've got my controls kind of locked down and I can't see that right now. Now this lady will allow me to change the color of the sunlight, so I've got a couple of different colors here I can show you. It's already white. Let's change it to orange. Subtle effect there. Let's change it to blue. It's getting darker. It's becoming evening. Let's change it to green. This is kind of like dawn. And if you change it to black, you actually get this darkened overcast. It's going to storm kind of effect. Love it. Let's change it back to white. And now take a look at the shadows, and we're going to change the angle of the shadows and the sun's actual direction in the sky. So changing these values, and I'm doing this because I set this event up myself, but you can change these values with events as well and get some really dramatic results, and you can make your own timekeeping system, which is what I'm planning on doing, and have that sun attached to an update function so that it moves on its own automatically. Now whenever I make progress with that plugin, I'll document my progress here and I'll upload and share whatever I can so that you guys have available access to that as well. Other than the transparency for the fog, I think that's about it for the features. Let's take a look at some of the things you can do with the note tags. All of the tiles on your map that you use to draw your maps and your levels and everything, the way that the engine knows which ones to make 3D and how to make them 3D, whether it's a fence or a counter or a cross shape or a bush, you have all of your customization right here in the note section of that tile set. So if we go ahead and pick 2 for the outside tile set, these note tags here are specific to this tile set. If we were to click a different tile set, the inside that doesn't have note tags for my project, neither does the dungeon. The outside tile sets note tags were copied from MV3D. They got to start with this tag here, and then at the very end they will end with the same tag with a slash at the beginning. All of these, which the instructions on how to use these are in the help file, or you can copy and paste from the demo project, will explain basically to RPG Maker and MV3D how to set those tiles up in your 3D world. Tree Canopy actually allows you to make ceilings. Roof tiles lets you see the tops of buildings that are flat. Slopes can be complicated, but after you have practiced with them for a little bit, they are just fine, trust me. These all refer to coordinates in your tile sets. And tile sets in RPG Maker are a little bit convoluted to begin with because of the way that they're set up. So if you want to get a real feel for how all of this works, and you're unfamiliar with RPG Maker MV's tile sets, I would recommend starting there and kind of seeing how they're laid out. For example, these are the A tiles. This is tile set A, but this is not all one file. The A section is actually composed of 5 different files. In this case, A1, which is your animation tiles, and it takes up about this much space here. A2 for your ground tiles. Actually, the animation tiles, I think, are the top 2 rows, and then the next 4 would be your ground. And then buildings, which takes up a big chunk here, and then walls, and then normal tiles, which are down at the bottom. So it's kind of worth looking at that and getting comfortable with how that stuff is laid out. Now we're going to look at something amusing. In the actors section of the database, if you go to their note tags, you can actually place certain note tags here as well, and you can place the one for scale, and you can change the scale of your character, so you can make a character that is super huge or super tiny. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Giant character. Oh yeah. We'll change the scale to be 1.5, and then we'll copy this note tag and we'll paste it into Therese's and we'll make her 0.5, and then we'll make the priestess in the back 2. We'll actually make Lucius, because I don't like Lucius, we're going to make him 0.1. We're going to make him extremely tiny. We're going to see what that looks like. I've never done this before. Is it going to bug out? And here we are. Lucius is gone. He is gone from the map. But our half-size sprite works just fine, and our 1.5 size sprite works great. So today we've taken a look at MV3D and a lot of its features. This is by no means an exhaustive list. I just want to make a video about it and get the word out as much as possible. This completely changes the way that I use RPG Maker MV, and it actually allows this engine to compete with other engines that it was not originally meant to compete with. RPG Paper Maker by Wano, what was that, is a great engine that's being updated frequently, and this actually gives this engine a lot of the features that that engine has because of RPG Maker MV's inherent extensibility. You've already got the ability to use countless plugins or create your own with RPG Maker MV, and this brings it into the 3D level. So it provides a world of usefulness for this engine now. We also have Smile Game Builder, which works completely in 3D, and you can use 2D graphics with it as well. And this makes it very, very similar to that, and the extensibility gives it a real edge if you're considering whether or not to use this over SGB. SGB still has the ability to use fully 3D graphics, sprites and everything, and it was built to work that way, and there's a little bit more intuitiveness with it when it comes to editing your 3D maps with 3D graphics in it, but this is definitely making it harder to pick only one. So with RPG Maker MV and MV3D, you are able to create 3D RPGs without any programming knowledge, and there is a Discord with a very helpful Dread who answers questions in a very timely manner. And yeah, that's it. I just wanted to help grow this community and contribute something to it myself. I'm really appreciative of this plugin and what it has enabled me to do, and I know that we are all very excited for what is to come, because version 0.6 is going to allow you to import 3D models. That reportedly is coming within the next month or so, but the ability to import 3D models onto your maps is going to be huge. That is extremely exciting, and I cannot wait to cover that in a future video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please check out the links in the description and see for yourself what all of the excitement is about, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, bye-bye.